Thanks so much everyone for watching. We've got an epic lineup tonight of speakers. We've got an awesome panel here. Amazing group of functional doctors, technology, activists for a leap forward in medicine.
You know, our goal is to make it easy for practitioners to learn in community.
This ecosystem that is being set up by the meetup groups, we believe will be the future ecosystem of this evolved primary care network, and it all revolves around you.
Welcome to the Functional Forum. Thanks for joining us in the charge to accelerate the evolution of medicine. Please welcome your host, James Maskell.
Hello and welcome to the Functional Forum. This month we are in Davis, California at UC Davis for the first functional medicine conference here on campus. There are students, local doctors, practitioners all here for a day of education, and you'll be excited to see, you'll be hearing from the lecturers, you'll be hearing from students, and you'll be hearing from a wide range of people who made this event happen. Enjoy. One of the amazing things about the Sacramento area is just how many different practitioners are working in different specialties and also working in a range of practices, from private practice and inside health systems. We're going to hear from a number of them today. Check out the next segment. All right, so to kick off this episode of the Functional Forum, we are going to talk to the instigator of this conference. This is Jennifer Adelman. And Jennifer, tell us a little bit about how this all came about.
So I have been going to the Functional Forum meetups for about a year and a half, and being the only undergraduate student there was kind of a shock to me because knowing that the future of medicine are these young students that are going through medical school or undergraduate school planning on becoming doctors. So I came up with this idea of how to kind of expand the functional medicine world, kind of especially in the greater Sacramento area, and I thought we might as well start with the students. So I wanted to bring as many students as I could here to UC Davis to learn more about functional medicine.
Wonderful. It's been great so far, and it's unbelievably well played. You know, the great speakers, and you got so many great speakers here in Sacramento to work with. So tell us a little bit about how you put this on, because I know that there are probably people who are watching who are thinking, wow, I'd like to do this in a medical school near me.
Yeah, it was actually a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. So originally I kind of thought I was going to hit a lot of resistance and that, you know, maybe some organizations wouldn't really help me with spreading the word. But once I just reached out to some organizations that are promoting healthy lifestyles on campus, that are promoting medical school, preparing for medical school education, they were 100% on board, and I was able to get a lot of students to hear about it and know about it and kind of spread the word for me. So it was actually very easy for me to do, kind of independently of the actual institution itself.
Yeah, let's dive into that a little bit, because I know obviously the hardest thing to do would be to get UC Davis to endorse functional medicine, but it didn't really work out like that. And I think actually this probably makes it a lot easier for other people wherever they are to replicate what you did. So tell us a little bit about exactly how it went down.
Right. So basically I reached out to various organizations that are promoting healthy lifestyles on campus, and I reached out to a lot of student clubs, so student-run organizations as well, that were promoting nutrition on campus, promoting various other things, and I was able to kind of get them to spread the word for me. And one UC Davis organization in particular was able to reserve the room for me and help me with some of the logistics, so it was actually very easy to do it completely separate from the institution.
So you're an undergraduate here at UC Davis. What are you studying?
My major is called Neurobiology, Physiology, and Behavior, and I'm doing a minor in management.
Amazing. And so what do you think, as you know, we're halfway through, it's obviously it's lunchtime here, seeing a lot of people pretty excited, and that last presentation was dynamite. So what are your hopes for this for the future?
I definitely want to do it again here, that's for sure. So I'm hoping to have another one, maybe make it an annual event. Since we'll have recordings of it, I'm hoping to kind of allow it to have some legacy and kind of last online, so that way people can kind of view it for as many times as they would like. And just kind of, I'll probably be starting a functional medicine interest group here on campus as well, just to keep anyone who came to the conference, you know, really engaged in the community and really interested in it, so that they can proceed into medical school and abroad, you know, with that knowledge and with that community of functional medicine.
Wonderful. Well, look, This brings together so many things that I'm super excited about. First and foremost, the Functional Forum meetup groups being a place where people could come together. Secondly, the sort of entrepreneurial spirit to do something. I really salute that in you. And if this resonated with you, if you're watching this from a group or if you're watching this by yourself and you'd like to bring this to a medical institution in your area, just click on the link below here and we will do everything that we can to help you replicate this. Many of the things that maybe you think would stand in the way from doing it, Jennifer's able to overcome really effectively. So thanks so much for leading, and it's going to be a great show. Enjoy. All right, we're here at UC Davis with Dr. Parvez Fateh. Doc, you're a pain doc and in private practice in the Bay. What made you come up here to UC Davis this weekend?
Well, I'm sort of a new convert to the whole world of functional medicine, just having learned about it probably about a year ago, and been studying it extensively ever since, and really trying to transform, as you're trying to transform health, I'm just trying to transform my career and into an area that can truly be effective.
What have you seen so far that was interesting?
Well, the concept of group visits really, I never thought about it, but it actually tapping into the psychological underpinnings of chronic illness. I've thought about just the efficiency of group visits, but not the actual impact of people seeing others improving.
All right, so it's not just students here at UC Davis. Got a great day lined up. Doc, thanks so much for being here and enjoy the rest of the day. So another local leader here is Dr. Eric Hassid. He works in the Integrative Center in Sutter Health. He did an incredible presentation, and one of the things that he shared were his 6 steps to optimal vitality. I think there's a lot to learn for any practitioner watching. Enjoy.
So anyway, from a more practical concepts, these steps to optimal health and vitality, the functional nutrition and GI health. We are big in the area of GI health. All of the providers over here, probably every single one, is like, start with the gut. Why is the gut so important? Because there's the whole microbiome, there's a gut permeability, the immune system, the hormonal system. All those factors are localized in many ways in the gut. And if a gut is abnormal for a variety of reasons, then it sends all these inflammatory reactive oxygen systems, chemicals out into the ether, which cause a lot of damage. So there's like a gut-brain connection, there's a brain-gut connection. So really we want to focus on that. So people ask, well, what's a really good diet? I mean, is there like an optimal diet? And I think there sort of is. I mean, everybody's a little bit different. But I think what we focus on, I think many of you will resonate with you, is a low glycemic load, so a kind of a lower carbish glycemic load, plant predominant, and anti-inflammatory diet. So for the Institute for Functional Medicine, IFM, they coin it the Mito food plan or the Mito Keto Flex food plan. So Mito food plan is basically, it stands for mitochondrial. Here you go again, mitochondria. So if you're reducing sugar intake, especially processed sugar, and if you're doing more plants, hormetic substances, and berries, hormetic substances, and you're doing an anti-inflammatory diet like lower gluten, maybe lower processed dairy and so forth, maybe nightshades, and then you include high quality protein, which can be meat as well, and healthy fat consumption. So that if you go online, you can actually see copies of the Mito food plan available there, but it is an IFM coined term, and it's really helpful, and it's the one that we use a lot for the average person coming in for just quality life. We often might put them through an anti-inflammatory diet first, just to see if there's any foods that are inflammatory to them, and then they can then, like if you have autoimmune diseases and so forth, but then I will then progress them to the Mito food plan eventually. Obviously, promoting healthy microbiome and gut barrier function. The best way to promote healthy microbiome is food and stress reduction and not being on medications. Birth control actually alter the microbiome and the barrier. Alcohol is a big one, so if it's Sunday morning, it's going to be a problem. And actually, if you do aggressive like marathon running without protection, you'll see a large increase in barrier dysfunction temporarily. So it's important to understand that. But prebiotics are important. Prebiotics are kind of like the healthy fibers. Those are kind of food for the bacteria. They're very good for helping to promote healthy microbiome. The use of probiotics is out there. It has benefit in some areas, but it's sort of inconsistent, and depending on what you read. But the notion of probiotics is good and is helpful to have as a tool, but the best way to change the microbiome is through stress reduction, medication reduction, alcohol reduction, and then using prebiotics and healthy nutrition. And then hormesis. So we want to talk about considering intermittent fasting and mild caloric restriction. to promote disease prevention and longevity. And then if you look at some of the nutritional herbal supplementation, people say, well, is there any benefit to vitamins and so forth? And you'll get these consensus statements that will come out saying, well, a multivitamin doesn't do anything. I said, well, it's kind of silly to look at it from that perspective. I mean, a multivitamin isn't going to save the world. I mean, there's no substitution of nutrition and lifestyle. But there's a lot of research looking at the targeted use of supplementation for certain conditions. For example, so people are really trying to find ways of improving Alzheimer's disease and mild cognitive impairment, MCI, which is the precursor of Alzheimer's disease. And they said, God, all this neuroinflammation and mitochondrial stuff and plaques and this and that, how do we change that? So UCLA did a study on theracurmin. Theracurmin is a highly absorbable form of turmeric, curcuminoids. Well, curcumin is phenomenal. It does everything. It reduces, all these inflammatory pathways. It upregulates all these these genetic pathways for like hormesis pathways. It's great. So they did an 18-month study, and they gave them a standard dose of what we actually have of theracurmin HP. And they found that the people who were on sort of the placebo arm, continued to sort of decline over time, which you would expect. But the actual theracurmin HP patients, not only did they not decline over 18 months, they actually improved. And you rarely see that with any drug with Alzheimer's. I'm actually a neurologist by training. I mean, there are a lot of drugs out there that really actually are helping dementia. The drugs that are starting to work are some of the anti-inflammatory drugs, sort of the rheumatology drugs, because you're affecting inflammation yet again. So it goes back to the support of inflammation. So there's a lot of good stuff out there. The essential nutrients are kind of the nutrients that we need to get from the outside because we can't make them. And those are the ones you typically see in a multivitamin mineral, bottom line. The A, the C, the E, the K1, the K2, and so forth. So those are important to do. If you have a really, really good diet, one can argue you may or may not need that, depending if it's an organic diet, where you are, where you live. People have argued, if you look at the soil today, the soil doesn't have the mineral content it used to have in the past. So some can be more minerally depleted. So a lot of times we'll actually add more selenium, add more magnesium, more zinc to our diet as supplementation. So there is some suggestion that maybe some supplementation in our American diet is probably a good idea. So I tend to sort of recommend it for our population. And those conditional nutrients are those that decrease with age. In other words, we can make them, but we don't always make them effectively. Those are the things like CoQ10, carnitine, lipoic acid, carnosine, even vitamin D. Those things, that ability under chronic disease and stress starts to go down. So above the age of 50 or with patients with chronic disease, you start seeing levels of these start to go down. So in that situation, it might be wise to consider supplementation, but again, it depends on the patient. And then lastly would be the natural hormetic agents. Those are actually, people used to think, or still think, that vegetables and fruits are quote unquote antioxidants. They're actually pro-oxidants. If you look at the actual aspect of the outer protective colors of the vegetables, they're actually meant to be repellents, is what they are. So what happens is when we consume them, yeah, there's probably some antioxidants in them, but in general, the way that we think that they're working is they're actually seen as a mild stress activator. So they actually activate the stress pathways no different than exercise does, or stress does, but they're controlled and they're low level. So things like resveratrol from red wine is actually a pro-oxidant. It turns on this pathway called SIRT1. SIRT1 turns on mitochondrial biogenesis. It turns on antioxidant defense systems as though you were under a bit of duress, like exercise. So resveratrol is actually thought to be an exercise mimicker. Alpha lipoic acid is also thought to be an exercise mimicker, and studies are supporting their use. So resveratrol, turmeric, which is curcumin, green tea extract, alpha lipoic acid, forms of niacin, PQQ, which was actually discovered at UC Davis, actually, are all designed to support hormetic activation. Means it turns on your endogenous systems. Because the way we get stronger, the way we probably will live longer, is not taking things that are free radical scavengers. If you look at vitamin C and vitamin E, which are free radical scavengers, they're just natural free radical scavengers. They just wipe out the free radicals. That's good if you're really, really sick. But if you're really wanting to be healthy and be hormetically strong, actually, if you look at exercise, if you take a lot of vitamin C with exercise, you will actually, you'll probably perform better, but you will find you will not be able to adapt. It reduces the strength capacity of weight training because the free radicals are just being wiped out. So it's fine if you're going to go on the day of a marathon, but when you're actually training, you want to make sure that you allow your body to have free radicals there. That's why taking a lot of supplements during training or right at the round training time may not be the best way to look at it. And we're going to get into exercise, so I'm not going to spend too much time, but the notion of cardiovascular training is important, resistance training is important, and of course a lot of flexibility, agility training is all important, especially as it relates to what you're doing specifically. And from our experience, we find that high intensity interval training cardiometabolically is probably one of the most cost-effective ways of getting outcomes that you want, because you're getting a lot of intensity intermittently for short periods of time, and of course weight training. People just don't lift weights. People tend to sort of think that they're going to get better metabolism by just doing aerobic training, and if you do aerobic training as HIIT and you do resistance training, you will start to see some of the benefits more than you would before. Emotional health is probably one of the biggest challenges, but it's also one of the biggest benefiters. Because if you look at a lot of the patients who don't seem to get better, they'll do, oh, God, doc, I'm eating well and I'm exercising, I'm not losing weight, I still got chronic fatigue. Invariably, if you ask them, they'll tell you, I'm stressed, I got financial issues, there's marital stresses, kid stresses, they're under a lot of stress. And coupled with that is they're not sleeping. So it's a sleep-stress combination that probably is one of the biggest determinants. Sleep, stress, and community, and relationships. Those to me are probably the biggest factors that ultimately determine wellness and potentially longevity. So we have to spend a lot of time focusing on that aspect. So teaching people some techniques, relaxation training, whether it be heart math biofeedback training or just mindfulness ACT training, cognitive stimulation, love, community, gratitude, giving, purpose. Those are all one of the most important things that we can do for our patients because that's what ultimately will make them better. And of course, sleep is not just about quantity, it's about quality. If we don't sleep well, we can sleep 10 hours. But if we have sleep apnea, or we're having restless legs, or we're having microarousals all night long, we're not sleeping well. So asking the question, do you feel refreshed in the morning? And you'd be surprised. I mean, most of us don't feel that refreshed in the morning for a variety of reasons. I mean, you guys probably don't, for sure. So for a variety of reasons. So I think that's really important. Sleep is the time when we rebuild. Sleep is a time when all the hormetic stuff that we do takes its effect. All growth hormone goes up, DHEA goes up during sleep. All the cleaning up all the debris in the brain from Alzheimer's occurs during sleep. So if we don't have that really quality dialed in, we're not going to get anywhere. Environment, we'll be talking about that a little bit more as well. But environmental exposures are paramount. We have pesticides, herbicides in this area. Again, from a hormetic perspective, a little bit of environmental stress is good. People argue that. They talk about low-level ionizing radiation. We're actually using now, experimentally, using periodic CAT scans on Alzheimer's patients, giving them radiation to their brain to turn on hormetic responses. Because again, it's about resilience. So if you can really do things properly, that's good. So is a little bit of is microarsenic a good thing, or micro-lead a good thing? Probably. That's why homeopathy might work. But if you do very high doses, which typically we're chronically exposed to, then it becomes a problem. So looking at heavy metals, looking at things like detoxification of heavy metals, looking at liver detoxification, nutritional supplements, and far infrared sauna. Those are all really nice ways of enhancing detoxification. People often take bentonite clay and charcoal to help the gut sort of eliminate some of the biotoxins and some of the elements that are kind of plaguing us. That can also help as well. And then hormonal health. Hormones are a really big factor. I personally enjoy hormones because it makes such a huge impact. But as we get older and with chronic disease, hormones will decline. And unfortunately, the ones we want to decline, don't, and the ones that we don't want to decline do. So for example, cortisol and insulin tends to go up, but of course DHEA, growth hormone, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, they all tend to drop, and vitamin D tends to drop. So the idea is to find optimal ways of making those hormones as normal as possible, whether it be through lifestyle, or some herbal adaptogens, or even hormone replacement therapy. Whatever works for that patient is critical.
All right, we are here. It's lunchtime at the conference. I'm here with Eva. She is an undergraduate. Eva, what did you learn here today?
I learned about functional medicine and how it's a new, innovative approach towards treating chronic illnesses, and I think it's very interesting. And can be more effective in the long term and a lot more cost efficient and sustainable.
What are you passionate about in your undergrad work right now, and how does it fit in?
I'm taking some neurobiology classes, and I think it's just like seeing how it's connecting between what I'm learning in class versus like a more applicable and real life thing. It just makes me more motivated to go into the medical field and more interested in how different approaches can be very effective and efficient.
Awesome. Well, look, we have the functional medicine doctors of the future here at UC Davis. Thanks so much for tuning in. Check out the next segment. All right, we are in the afternoon break. We just had Dr. Bill Barley talking to us about cardiometabolic disease. Doc, you had some great acronyms there. We had the 4 Ds, the 4 Ps, and the 4 S's. Can you just talk us through for our audience?
Absolutely. So when I look at functional medicine, I kind of think of it in simple terms because I'm a simple fella. And so I think about the 4 Ps, the 4 Ds, and the 4 S's. And so the 4 Ds really describe traditional medicine to me: diagnose disease and dispense drugs. And for certain circumstances, that's really important and it's needed. And traditional medicine is very good about building a differential diagnosis and coming down with the disease, and then we can diagnose that disease and dispense a drug. But really, as we know in functional medicine, if we can look upstream and we can look at the 4 Ps, which would be preventing problems by promoting physiology. And everyone has different physiology and everyone's unique, epigenetics and genetics and the such. So if we could apply functional medicine and really give patients the 4 Ps, then we can avoid the 4 Ds. In particular, today I spoke about the integrative approach to diabetes and cardiovascular disease. So I kind of came up with the 4 S's, which really is the bottom of the matrix, and that is the standard American diet. So we want to eliminate that. The second one is sleep. We want to investigate that, make sure people are getting sleep. S is your sedentary lifestyle, lack of exercise. And then the other 4 S would be stress or cortisol. And then after you spoke this morning, I thought, well, wait a sec. The 5th S is the relationship. We could say solitude, because solitude and loneliness is definitely part of it. So if we look at the 4 Ps and in this lens look at the 5 S's, then that would really prevent problems and it would promote physiology.
Wonderful. Well, look, it was a really great lecture, and I thought as part of our presentation, we would bring out just the case study that did at the end, which really shares, what's possible with functional medicine. Doc, thanks for being on the front lines all these years.
Thank you for everything.
And it's been a great session. Enjoy. All right, next up, we are going to be hearing from 2 pediatrician sisters that practice together in the Sacramento area. Dr. Katie Long and Dr. Nicole Shorrock do incredible things in their practice inside the health system, taking insurance with kids on the autism spectrum and a range of chronic illness. They did an incredible case study showing the journey from microbiome issues all the way through to regressive autism and back. Incredible presentation. Enjoy.
I want to introduce you to a boy named Carter. I hope that Carter's story helps to illustrate how we approach medicine differently when we know the root causes of our health conditions. Remember Carter's story. We will talk more about Carter later. Carter was born at term by a C-section after a pregnancy complicated by toxic mold in their family home. His mother's history was significant for vegan nutrition as well as infertility. When Carter was only 4 months old, he developed an ear infection and was given antibiotics for the first time. After that, he began to have chronically loose stools and eczema on his skin. Multiple other antibiotic courses were given over the course of Carter's first year of life. Leading up to his first birthday, Carter's parents reported that his development was normal. He was a happy, engaged baby. He had more than 10 distinct words. He had strong eye contact, was described as very affectionate, and was also a great eater. At a year of age, Carter developed another illness, thought to be a viral infection, and later an ear infection, and was placed on antibiotics again. At this same time, Carter also received multiple immunizations. Over the next week, Carter's development regressed dramatically. He was no longer doing things that he was doing before. He was not interested in playing with other children. He was no longer interacting with his family, was only eating oats and tortillas, was barely babbling anymore, and wasn't responding to his name or even making eye contact. I met Carter when he was a year and a half or 17 months old. I had the difficult responsibility of letting his family know that he was developing symptoms consistent with autism. He was later referred to the UC Davis Mind Institute, where he was formerly diagnosed with this condition.
Here is a graphic of Carter's timeline. This is a tool that we use in functional medicine to help us organize our patient's story and to look for patterns that illustrate for us what could be causing the dysfunction. What do we see in Carter's timeline? We see that before he was even born, his mother's history of infertility, mold exposure, and vegan nutrition set him up for increased vulnerability to disease. Throughout his first year, he had multiple infections and was treated with multiple courses of antibiotics. You can see here at 4 months that after an ear infection and antibiotics, he developed chronic loose stools and eczema, both signs of gut dysfunction and malabsorption of nutrients. Over the next several months, his growth fell off the growth curve, and he was failing to thrive. We see then at 1 year that he had the perfect storm, another infection, received multiple immunizations, and was placed on antibiotics again. And within a short few weeks, he had evidence of brain inflammation and developmental regression, which was ultimately diagnosed as autism. So what else do we know? From a functional medicine perspective, this is our understanding of what happened in Carter's body. Carter's antibiotics at birth, and then again multiple times throughout infancy, caused significant imbalance in his microbiome, which results in increased intestinal permeability and ultimately significant immune dysregulation. We'll explain this in detail. The immune dysregulation increases his risk of autoimmunity. And after a combination of insults at 1 year, he developed autoimmunity to the brain, which ultimately caused regressive autism.
Now we'll move on to the exciting part, which is Carter's recovery. Carter's lab results uncovered imbalance of his microbiome, chronic inflammation and malabsorption within his intestines, multiple food sensitivities, nutrient deficiencies, and a high body burden of toxins. These toxins included heavy metals and mold toxins as well. These factors, combined with genetic predisposition uncovered, were all contributing to cellular dysfunction and processes mentioned earlier with methylation and the function of the mitochondria. These cellular processes are critical to the developing brain and are studied extensively in relationship to autism. So now that we knew the root causes of Carter's developmental regression, we were able to personalize his care to work towards reversal of these factors. Over the next 4 months, we implemented what is called the Functional Medicine 5R program for intestinal healing. As you can see, there are 5 steps, the first of which is to remove things like inflammatory food proteins from food allergies or even food sensitivities, removal of toxins, infection within the microbiome. Next, we replace supportive factors like fiber, micronutrients, digestive enzymes, and stomach acid. We then need to re-inoculate that microbiome that was damaged. Prebiotics feed the microbiome, and probiotics help to encourage growth of more supportive balance within the gut. We then repair that gut lining we talked about that has been injured and is more permeable. Nutrients such as zinc, vitamins A, D, and C, amino acids like L-glutamine, all help with cellular healing on the lining of the intestines. Lastly, but very importantly, we need to rebalance. When we rebalance, we address the nervous system. Dr. McCarthy talked about this in part, but our nervous system essentially has 2 main modes, our fight or flight response and our rest and digest response. And if we don't support stress to increase the strength of the rest and digest response of the nervous system, we aren't able to heal. So more specifically for Carter's case, he was started on a nutrient-dense, low-inflammatory style of nutrition that removed gluten, dairy, soy, refined sugars. Our functional trained dietitian supported the family in this, as well as expanding Carter's diet. Despite their vegan nutrition, they agreed to add liver and egg as medicine. They also moved out of their moldy home and eliminated EMF exposures to the best of their ability. EMFs include things like Wi-Fi. We added prescription as well as herbal support of his microbiome imbalance, started probiotics, encouraged fermented foods, and repleted nutrient deficiencies. During this time, we gently supported his detoxification pathways to eliminate the toxic burden within his body. And in order to address his nervous system, he began a therapy called craniosacral therapy. He had an occupational therapist throughout this time as well. Within 2 months of this initial plan, Carter's loose stools and eczema resolved completely. But more importantly, his developmental regression had come to a halt. At the end of a 6-month period, Carter's speech had improved to average for age. His growth percentiles had recovered, and I will never forget the tears in his mother's eyes when she reported to me that he now tells her, "I love you." Over the next 2 years, Carter and his family continued to follow this plan with alterations whenever they were needed. He had recovered completely from his autism by age 4. He is now thriving in mainstream kindergarten, and his autism diagnosis has been removed. So James mentioned this, but some people have concerns that functional medicine is too expensive. It is true that it takes us more time. We have to slow down and think through our patient's individual uniqueness. I probably saw Carter 20 times for about an hour each visit. An hour-long visit may pay about $200 from insurance. We performed $1,000, I would say, or so in laboratory testing for Carter. So his functional medicine care did cost around $5,000. But as we mentioned, it led to a reversal of his autism. The lifetime cost of care for a child diagnosed with autism is $2.4 million. We cannot afford to not practice functional medicine. Woo! You can see we're a little jumpy. I'm going to share a letter with all of you from Carter's mother. Dear Dr. Katie, I've been trying for the last 1.5 years to express how thankful we are to have found you. Every day since we found out about Carter's condition, we have known that God brought us to you. When Carter was born, we had been married over 10 years and had wanted a child ever since. I had surgery for a tumor, which resulted in major complications. Long story short, many professionals told us I could never carry a baby. After trying to conceive without success, I made an appointment with the adoption agency. A month after scheduling this, we found out I was expecting. That day and every day following in my pregnancy, I had no caffeine, sugar, pre-made foods. I didn't wear makeup, use nail polish, or any unclean products of any kind. I carried him for 3 days past my due date and was so excited in the hospital. Everyone in our family came to see our miracle baby. Ever since Carter was born, every decision and action in our family has been centered around him. When we met you and found out what was happening, it shattered our world for a moment. Not out of anger or wondering why, but sheer shock that we could have, and almost did, lose our miracle. I know that I get very emotional at our visits, and it's literally the overwhelming thankfulness for all of this happening. The fact that you saw and acted upon your instincts saved our son and our entire family. We are not just willing, but are happy to do whatever it takes for him. We are thankful for the path of his life and to God for meeting you. I wanted you to know more about who Carter really is and what you have given us, which is Carter in our life. He is so incredible, and we have nothing but faith for his future now. You will never know what you have really given us, but I hope we will be able to show you how much love and appreciation we have and always will have for you. Thank you for saving my sons and my life. All of my love, Heather. This is why I do what I do. Each of my patients is unique and holds a special place in my heart, but I'm happy to report that we are in partnership and care for multiple children with symptoms and recoveries similar to Carter's. That being said, if Carter had been my only patient, my only story of success, I would know that my long hours, entire training, and lifelong commitment to expanding my education were worth every second.
Can we imagine a world where chronic diseases like autism were recoverable? In this world, we would no longer focus our medical care on eliminating the symptoms, but treat the underlying causes and cure the illnesses, providing long-term vitality and well-being to our patients. Imagine the quality of life differences we could make. Whether it's eczema or irritable bowel syndrome or autism or dementia. The functional medicine map provides a guideline for us on how to help uncover the imbalances and cure the diseases. As future medical leaders in America, this is what you were called to do. This is what you were meant to do, and this is what we can do. Thank you.
All right, we're in the afternoon break here. I'm with Eileen. She is pre-med here at UC Davis and ready for a career in healthcare. Eileen, tell us a little bit about what you've learned so far today.
Today we are just digging deep into what functional medicine is and how it differs from Western medicine. And I think what stood out to me the most is how functional medicine really focuses on the physiology of people and getting them better into wellness and focusing on nutrition and all these different areas that you could really benefit in your life versus just putting a bandage over a symptom or a sign that you're getting. And so I think, that's just is really awesome. And I would want to further that in my career. And so, yeah.
Awesome. So before you came to this conference, what were you thinking about your trajectory into medicine?
Just normal nurse practitioner, I thought I'd be going to the hospital with a mindset of helping people, whereas now I want to help them in a deeper way of teaching them and educating them what it looks like to live a lifestyle of wellness and just educating them of what it looks like to be healthy.
Awesome. Well, look, there's a lot of nurse practitioners in private practice, working with physicians in functional medicine, so the opportunities are limitless, and I wish you good luck on your career. Lots of excited medical students here this weekend at UC Davis. Check out the next segment. So one of the cool things about being here in Sacramento is that there are so many great functional medicine practitioners practicing in different specialties. So we're going to hear a little bit here from Dr. Tracy McCarthy, who is a psychiatrist in private practice, and she's going to be sharing about stress, ACEs, and its effect on mental health issues. Enjoy.
And I'm going to close here with this case study of a patient of mine, a current patient who's working with me in my program, in my practice. And she's a 36-year-old with chronic, severe treatment-resistant depression. She's had depression for at least a decade, and in the last 5 years, very severely, to the point that she's actually had 2 past suicide attempts, and she has chronic suicidal thoughts. Her depression has been unresponsive to medication, to therapy. She's even had TMS, which is transmagnetic stimulation, and she even had ECT last summer, which is electroconvulsive therapy, and no improvement on these. She only has a couple days out of the month, or at this time she only had a couple days out of the month where she didn't feel suicidal, and those couple days of the month were during her period. She was working nights, And she had a history of a prior abusive relationship. She used to really enjoy her job, but things had changed at the job, and now she felt like she wasn't really of value there, and she was lacking a sense of purpose. She had, through her depression, really isolated herself from her friends. I don't think working nights helped that either. And she, like so many of my patients will be like, oh, I eat really healthy. And then when you really ask, it's like, well, not really. They're following old conventional advice, like we should be low fat, and they're having too many refined carbs and not enough fiber and veggies. So with testing and on her history, the findings included that she did have a dysregulated cortisol pattern because she'd been doing that shift work and from her chronic depression and her inflammation. She was making antibodies to her thyroid glands. She had Hashimoto's thyroiditis, so her thyroid was under attack and the thyroid hormone levels were imbalanced. She also had very low progesterone and extremely high estrogen. And this is not a shock when we hear that the only 2 days of the month that she felt good were in the middle of her period. She had gut dysbiosis on her stool testing results, and she had elevated beta-glucuronidase. That's something produced by gut bacteria that will impair the excretion of estrogen. So this was one of the reasons that her estrogen was very high. She also had exposures to xenoestrogens, which again you'll hear more about later, but those are things from plastics and cosmetics and lotions and stuff that so many women are exposing themselves to. And finally, she had a genetic mutation that meant it was hard for her to make active folate, and she had low vitamin B12, and as a result of those factors, she had elevated homocysteine, which is a marker of inflammation. So the treatment plan we came up with, she went on short-term disability. That's not a normal part of my treatment plans, but she had already been on disability during the ECT, and she really was a very extreme case of depression. She was like, if this doesn't work, this is my last hope. Which you don't want to hear when someone comes to you, but luckily I felt like I think I can help her. And she, right away was like, you can't be working nights if we're going to heal you right now. This is not going to work. Put her on an autoimmune paleo diet to identify and remove food triggers. This was important as we had found that she had autoimmunity in the form of Hashimoto's. There was nutrient support for missing nutrients like magnesium, omega-3s, B vitamins, and more. She had gut dysbiosis that, as I mentioned, so we treated that and we used a gut healing protocol. We supported her progesterone and supported estrogen metabolism and excretion by binding the beta-glucuronidase and, of course, getting to the root cause, which was the gut dysbiosis, and supported methylation. And this is, this is not last and least. This is key, which is learning the stress reduction techniques, learning to retrain some of those negative thoughts. She'd been depressed so long that her brain was really in a rut around certain thoughts that needed to be addressed. And she journaled regularly, and this was the beginning of changing her brain patterns. So within 2 months, she had dramatic results. And the first time in 5 years, she was free of her suicidal thoughts. It was really profound. She was able to participate in activities with friends. She went on an overnight field trip with her child's class, which was something she'd never, ever would have done before. Her relationships had improved, and she was starting to have interest in looking for a job that was going to be a daytime job, give her new purpose, and support her health in the timing of the job.
All right, I'm here with Russell Dunning. He just did an awesome presentation on exercise and all of its aspects here. Russell, I know that you spend a lot of time working with trainers and coaches and other practitioners. Exercise is something that is obviously a key part of the functional medicine operating system, but not really being done that well by most doctors, I would imagine.
Yeah. We tend to, like you said, work in silos. We think of just this narrow pathway of interacting with people rather than looking at everything that's happening. How are they waking up? What are they doing each day? How are they socially living? It's appreciating the full person, and we need to stop thinking in terms of too narrow of a framework and really kind of asking broader questions and seeing how we can impact people's lives.
What can the average practitioner in private practice do to really change the way that their patients interact with exercise?
Well, I think asking very open-ended questions on what motivates them. I think the problem with exercise is it has a bit of a misnomer. The misnomer is that you need to be in a gym doing reps and sets. And it should be activity for a purpose. Exercise needs to be really more about how are you moving right now to better enable a better, meaningful life. So a more open-ended question is, what do you want in life? What are you trying to achieve? Why are you doing these things? And how are you trying to help your body adapt to be able to do something that gives you meaning? It's more open-ended questions of why are we doing the things we're doing.
Awesome. Well, what I really enjoyed about your presentation earlier was just all the different aspects that go into exercise. It's really not one thing, is it?
Yep, I think that's the best part is there's no reason to label any part of the physical spectrum as more important than another. And in reality, what is going to help people move better is finding their limiting factor, whether it is how well they move, whether it's how well their joints articulate, whether it's the strength and bracing quality of their body, or maybe it's the speed of how they operate, or are they able to generate power. So appreciating the full spectrum of movement and making sure that if there are imbalances or maybe a bucket isn't appropriately filled, that we address that. Because in reality, most of us, we like doing what we're good at. And the body is probably going to be fueled better by addressing your limitations rather than doing something that you like doing.
Absolutely. And you really put that into action with standing up without your knees and your hands. Can you do a demo for us?
Yeah,
a quick demo?
Yeah, so the research, I think it comes out of Brazil. But it goes something in the nature of if you're sitting down, are you able to stand up without the use of your hands or putting your knee on the ground? And if you can do that with no other points of contact besides your feet, you're doing pretty good. Your risk of dying relatively soon goes down. But if you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, and you need extra bracing support to get that up, to get up from that position, well, the research will say that your longevity is less than your counterpart that can do it without bracing. And what does that require? It requires a blend of joint mobility and fascial line length and stability through our hips and our feet and our spine, and just some absolute strength of being able to get up. So it requires all those elements of the equation.
Absolutely. Well, great presentation today, and it's right in line with our year of resilience. Thanks so much for being part of the Functional Forum. Check out the next segment. All right, it's lunchtime here at the conference, and I'm here with one of this afternoon's speakers, Dr. Jeffrey Egler, a newbie to the Sacramento area, but not to functional medicine. Doc, tell us a little bit about what you're up to here.
Thanks, James. So I have been recruited to Adventist Health, which is a large integrated healthcare system. My mission is to create a wellness center that will eventually be a model that we can potentially roll out to our entire system, which is 4 states, 20-some hospitals, 300 multi-specialty and primary care clinics. And what our job is to really figure out how do we integrate all of these technologies, the paradigm of functional medicine, whole person care, and kind of get it down so that we can do it in an insurance-based model.
What are the things you've learned so far in working inside a big system as opposed to just being in private practice?
A lot of learnings and a lot of work and a lot of pivoting all the time. But one of the blessings that I really have is that Adventist Health is really committed to this. We really have full support. When we talk, they listen. We hear a lot. Well, I ask questions. I say, can we do this? I hear a lot. Well, we've never done that before. But I very rarely hear no. One of the things that I've learned that I know is very near and dear to your heart is how do you take care of a 1,200 to 1,800 person population that is the same size or bigger than a traditional family medicine practice, but you want to do so with a functional medicine model. It means more time investment with an individual. You can't do that one-to-one. So there's a lot of innovation there, and group visits is what we're moving into now. We're creating not only group visits, but cycles of group visits. So a person can enter into a certain track, start to get education along that, and then learn that there's other tracks that they can filter into too.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Egler will be actually with a speaker at our IFM pre-party this year. I think this is one of the most exciting projects in medicine. What do you think?
Well, that's what got me here. I'm super excited about it. I'm also super excited about collaborating with you and all the wonderful people that we meet that are in it to win it here.
Yeah, you probably didn't know that much about the Sacramento functional medicine community, but what do you think so far? You've been here a few months.
It's great. Thank you for taking me under your wing. And the people that I've met, some of the people that are presenting here today, just incredible people to work with. I'm really excited.
All right, you'll be hearing a little bit more from Dr. Egler later in his presentation, but we'll see you at the IFM pre-party this year in Phoenix, and check out the next segment.
Let's talk for a little bit about business models, because hopefully when we figure it all out for you, when you graduate from medical school, you'll just come out and get a functional medicine job. But right now, that's not the case, right? So let's talk about what it looks like right now. What are some models of success? And then we'll talk about future state too. So if you've studied medicine at all, you know that there are a couple of categories. There's fee-for-service models. So this is typically outside the insurance realm, or even the insurance realm is based on fee-for-service. You go to see a doctor, you go to see a provider, they render a service, you get paid X for that service. So insurance doesn't do a great job of covering the type of care that we ideally want to do with our patients. Because ideally, it comes down to spending more time with them. It comes down to hearing their story, digesting it, and processing it with them. It also comes down to throwing some spaghetti at the wall and seeing what works. Not so much because I don't know what will work if we do it, but because I don't know you yet to know what you're capable and willing to do. And so we have to spend some more time together, right? So a lot of doctors in functional medicine sort of, as James was talking about, his first book was about, this is how you do it outside of the system. Right? This is what you're going to have to, you're going to start a practice, everything's going to be great, you're just going to do all these things on your own. One of the problems, though, is nobody teaches you how to do business in medical school, so we'll get to that in a little bit. But so there's a fee-for-service model, and that's sort of where the concierge practices come from, and the direct primary care models. There's subscription models that have emerged that have been very, very successful. Well, instead of just doing an exchange for one visit, let's sign somebody up for a program. A, it's good for business because I know they're going to come back, but B, and perhaps more importantly, it sets people up for success because you're not going to be successful by just getting a consult and trying to go out and do it on your own. There's insurance-based models. I've come full circle. I left the insurance-based model because I didn't know or think that it could be done in that, and I'm coming back. I've been invited back to try to figure out how to do it in that model and do it well. And then we're going to talk about some innovative models. So I have had the privilege, the honor, the amazing experience of living through examples of each of these. My first job was lifespan medicine. This is what made me take the big leap out of academics and into functional medicine. It's a fee-for-service, split down the middle, and concierge as well. Successful enough, and my mentor, Dr. Chris Renna, that built this practice and has been doing this for years and years, and I learned so much from him, is able to charge, at the time, $10,000 to $15,000 per member for a year for comprehensive, holistic, functional, integrative care. But you better believe that when you're paying that kind of money, that if you have a sniffle on a Saturday, that doctor's probably driving out to Malibu to see you for your sniffles, right? That's a lot of money. And so you kind of have to, there's pros and cons to that kind of care as well, right? Or that kind of model. They also have fee-for-service, though, where you can pay $400 to go see a provider for an hour. And there's all kinds of models, $100 an hour, $200 an hour, but it's mostly out of pocket, right? Because insurance doesn't really compensate us well for time. From this position, I got the opportunity to work with Robin Berzin and her startup, which is an incredible success. I became the medical director of Parsley Health Los Angeles, and we built that from scratch, from zero. We had over 1,000 patients when I left 2 years later to come to this project, and they're growing like gangbusters now. I mean, they really just kind of hit critical mass and are expanding. This is a subscription model. Let's talk about what this looks like. You get a yearly membership. You get 5 visits with a doctor, 5 visits with a health coach, unlimited messaging, telehealth, so you don't have to go into the office. You don't have to drive in LA traffic for 2 hours. You can just be in your pajamas on the couch and talk with your doctor and go over your labs. Member discounts, the health and wellness services, $150 a month. It's about $1,800 a year. So it still might be a lot for people that are already crunched and are paying for insurance, but it's a heck of a lot more accessible than some of the alternatives. And it makes it a doable model. It makes it a receivable model. And there's obviously interest. They've picked up quite a bit of venture capital and are really growing and doing very well. So you might ask, why in the world would you leave? My wife asks me that all the time. But she doesn't ask me it since we moved here, and because she sees how filled up I am with the work that I'm doing now. And so the question really hasn't rolled off our lips since we left Los Angeles. This is the Inspire Health Center. So this is the work that I'm excited to be doing now. How can we create, in an insurance-based model, with a population that is typical for the average family practice, how can we really create a model that then this organization can field out to its entire healthcare system? Adventist Health is an integrated healthcare system, spans 4 states, California, Oregon, Washington, and Hawaii. I'm pretty excited about the Hawaii part. It has 20 to 30 hospitals, 300 plus clinics, primary care and multi-specialty care. Its reach is pretty big. It's a $4 billion a year company. So we're working within this. They came to me and they said, look, we recognize what we want to do. We want to create whole person care again. We need somebody, we need to build a team. We need to create a model that is fiscally sustainable for a big system.
Thank you so much for joining us for this month's Functional Forum. If you're inspired by this episode and would like to do something similar to this in a medical school near you, click here on the link and we can help you to do exactly that. This whole thing began because of the Functional Forum meetup groups, and we're super excited to continue to build those and double down on building those meetup groups, because you never know what could happen. It could turn into something like this. Next month, we are going from the macro to the micro. We're going to be hearing from Dr. Mark Hyman with his vision for transforming the food system and what functional medicine doctors and practitioners could do to help. And we're going to be going inside the cell with Dr. Bob Navio as he shares some of his new research on the cell danger response. It's going to be a great episode. Get your community together. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.